A quick disclaimer before we start this episode. This is one of our strange food episodes, so we're going to be talking about some foods that some listeners might find a bit gross. So vegetarians and vegans certainly won't be excited to hear about this one, and expect some graphic language relating to animal parts. You have been warned. Welcome to The Dish, the culinary travel podcast focusing on the stories behind world-famous foods.
We are your hosts, Tomo and Megsy from foodfuntravel.com. Join us for tasty histories, destination food guides, and more.
All right, welcome everybody to another episode of The Dish.
Yes, I hope you guys are ready for this. Maybe have some tasty food nearby to soothe you after we or during this particular podcast episode, because we're talking about a strange food that it does get people pretty squeamish.
Yeah, this dish is called Balut, which I think, like, these days, a lot of people have heard of this now. Like, it used to be some strange food thing from Asia that no one really knew about in the West, but now it's been popularized.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a few like strange food shows, and it seems to be the first thing they go for. So it's like the Andrew Zimmerman, and I don't know if Bourdain had it, but I remember like Hamish and Andy, the Australian comedians, they definitely went and ate balut. I remember that in their travel show, and yeah, it's become more of a known thing for sure.
But I still think, and for people who don't know what balut is, it is instead of a boiled egg, it is a boiled egg that has been fertilized, and so there is an embryo inside it.
And it's usually a duck egg, right?
It's usually a duck egg, but it can actually also be a chicken egg.
Oh, okay.
So obviously when you break into the egg and start eating the bits, there is a little sort of developing duck.
There's
or
a bird.
Chicken inside with a little bit of beak and feathers and stuff. So it's sort of strange.
It is a bit strange. Although I have to say that little barbecue birds in China, you're eating the whole bird there as well. But just because it's barbecued, it's delicious.
But you see, that's a bird that was born.
That's true, yeah.
It's lived very briefly, whereas this is a developing embryo.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit on the icky side to think about eating it.
Instantly gives you the heebie-jeebies.
Which is obviously why so many YouTubers and food video people have been filming this thing.
It's clickbait.
Yeah, it is clickbait. It is attention-grabbing stuff, right? So yeah, let's talk about balut. Balut, spelled B-A-L-U-T, but occasionally spelled B-A-L-O-T, which is strange.
Ballot. Go to vote.
Ballot.
Go and vote. Do you want to eat this? No!
So yeah, it's a developing bird embryo inside its egg. Usually duck, but sometimes chicken. It's boiled inside the shell, and then you break open the shell and you eat it out of it. It's most popular in the Philippines.
Yeah, they eat it like they'll go down the corner and like you'd pick up a pack of chips for a snack, and they eat it like they pick up some chips.
Yeah, it's a popular street snack.
Yeah.
It's a street food thing that a lot of people eat. And yeah, even though it seems a little gross to us, it is very popular. So it's an essential street food. It's an essential cultural food from the Philippines. Definitely a dish worth talking about because it's so important to their culture. So we might find it strange, but I'm sure they find some of the food we eat strange. So what are you going to do?
Yeah, I'm sure they're like, oh, these weirdos eating. Well, I mean, everyone thinks I'm a weirdo. Vegemite. I love Vegemite.
So yes, in Filipino language, the Tagalog, I think it's pronounced Tagalog.
Tagalog?
But it's actually pronounced Tagalog, I think. Tagalog.
Oh, Tagalog.
We've been pronouncing it wrong forever. I looked it up.
I'm so sorry to all of our Filipino friends.
Phonetically, apparently, it's Tagalog.
Okay.
And hopefully I've got that right. The word balut means wrapped. So I'm assuming the etymology refers to the fact that it's wrapped within its shell.
Yeah.
Delicious.
Deliciousness.
So the length of incubation before the egg is cooked and served, it's a matter of personal preference, really. Generally ranges between 14 and 21 days, but most agree that 18 days is the best, and that's what we tried. It's called balut sa puti when it's 18 days. So you've got different names because there's different developments of the embryo. Apparently, the ladies prefer the 16-day ones because they're a little bit less crunchy.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Like, the further along it goes, the crunchier it gets, and that's when it gets into your head and grosses you out. I mean, unless you're a Filipino lady, and then you're like, might just prefer it this way, perhaps.
I don't know, but apparently they did a little survey of like which ones people preferred. And well, there was this massive study about balut that I read through that before I put this together. So it was one of the sources I used. They were talking about the fact that they surveyed people and women prefer the 16 days and men prefer the 18 days.
Well, I'd have to say, we had the 18-day one and I wouldn't want it more crunchy than that. That was enough of a...
Yeah, at that point,
enough for me.
You're crunching some beak and there's some little bones that you're very aware that you're eating them.
It's going to be more feathers. Ugh.
Yeah. But yes, balut is consumed in quite large amounts in Southeast Asia, specifically the Philippines, as we said, but is also popular in Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, Thailand, and China. And it's been considered, at least in the past, and probably still today, it's been considered the national street food of the Philippines. In fact, one writer, all the way back in the 1950s, said that balut is as popular in Manila as hot dogs are in New York.
Yeah, that's what I said. It's like picking up a bag of chips.
But, I mean, actually, today it has declined. And we were there a few years ago now, but in the last 20 to 30 years, it has declined because more Western foods have come in and fast foods. People can have stuff that tastes pretty decent, but still really cheap. And the culture is moving towards more international foods. But of course, still loving Filipino food, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, we were there in 2013, I think it was. And it was very prevalent then. It was, there was tons of people selling it on the street, but
apparently, if you went there in the 70s, it was way more prevalent. Way more than it was when we went. And they've taken this food all over the world as well. So if you find Filipino communities in the US, they are getting duck eggs and they are making balut. It's not like they got out of the Philippines and went, right, don't have to eat that anymore. They're like, no, we really like this, so we're gonna keep making it. So yeah, the actual taste of the egg specifically depends on the breed of duck that bears the egg.
Oh.
So it's actually, they really want to raise different ducks for duck meat than they do for duck eggs. And they do. So
that's very interesting.
It's actually...
Also, how do they know that it's been fertilized? Like, I mean, you can sit there and we're going to get to that. Okay, we're going to get into the hanky-panky of ducks.
We're going to get onto that relatively soon, actually. That's coming up pretty quick. Hanky-panky, hanky-quacky? Cranky-panky. Quacky-panky.
No.
All right, yeah. So the egg ducks that are actually the most popular ones, they come from the mallard breed of duck, locally known as pateros or pateros itik. And itik is like the Tagalog word for duck, and pateros is specifically the word for mallard. But we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. And these are the ones that they use for the duck for the egg production because it's
better for eggs than for meat.
I mean, I'm sure if you ate the meat, it would be fine.
Because duck is fantastic.
Because duck is great, but it's just apparently they've tried lots of different breeds over the years, and this is the one that's delicious, the best balut.
All right.
So duck eggs that are not actually properly developed after 9 or 12 days, so they haven't actually been fertilized properly. These aren't called balut, but they're still sold.
They're just called boiled eggs.
No, but the problem is, like, a regular egg, you get the egg from the chicken or duck straight away, and you take it and you package it and you eat it.
Yeah.
Whereas these have been held at 40 degrees C, incubated for like a number of days before they realize that they're not fertilized. So unlike a regular egg that would be kept at like room temperature or refrigerated.
Yeah.
So this has changed what's inside the egg. Like, it changes the nature of the egg. It's different from a regular egg.
Okay.
It's closer to a regular egg, but it's different because it's been held at heat for such a long time. Yeah, these are called penoy, and they obviously they're much more similar to a regular hard-boiled egg than they are to a balut, but they are somewhere in between. So what they do to figure out if this is going to be a balut egg or a penoy egg is they hold a light up to the egg, and you can actually just see that there's something developing inside.
Oh.
Because the skin of the egg is hollow enough.
The cheapest ultrasound in history.
Yep. And this has been done for so long, they used to do it with candles. It was actually called candling. That was the name they used to check if it was a fertilized egg or not. And so, they can then see, well, there's no actual fetus in this, so that's penoy. We'll get rid of that and sell it straight away. And otherwise, they put it back in the incubators and they leave it for a few more days. So they do that check around about 9 days in. That's at the point where you can actually tell if the fetus is developing or not. And then they leave it to continue developing if they've seen that it's actually going on. So after incubation as it gets towards that sort of 14 to 16 days, the yolk starts to soften and the egg white actually hardens. And after boiling that egg, so when you actually cook it in the end, the top part of the egg yolk actually becomes quite watery. It's got this liquidy bit.
Yeah, and that's, people love that bit.
Well, apparently, what it is when you bite into your balut for the first time, you're supposed to sip the liquid straight out, and that lets you know if it's a good one or not.
Yeah.
And if it's not tasting good, then you probably don't want to eat it. So,
but the dude that we were having it with, he was just like whacking chili in there. So you're not going to be able to tell if you've just given it a hit of chili at the same time.
I mean, a bit of chili, a bit of vinegar, and we'll talk about that later on as well. But yeah, I think if you're an expert at eating this stuff, you know what the flavor is supposed to be like.
Yeah.
We had no idea what we were doing. So we're just like, okay, I guess I'm eating it. And he told us it was fine. So we ate it. So yeah, at this point, the entire inside of the egg is changing. So yeah, then when it's cooked, it comes out differently as well. But the egg white is actually hardening before it's cooked. That's not because it's boiled, it's hardening anyway, apparently.
Oh.
So I don't know. That's the information that I've got. I don't know if I'm 100% on, but that seems to be what happens. When it gets to 14 to 16 days, the embryo is sort of floating nearer to the top of the egg in the egg yolk stuff. At that point, it's called mamatong balut. And then when it gets to 17 to 18 days, it's the balut saputi, the popular one, where the embryo has become wrapped in a sort of whitish membrane, which is what we had when we broke into the egg. There was like a little bit of membrane inside that we had to like pick off before you could actually get to eat everything. So yeah, that's, I told you this was going to be a delicious sounding episode. I warned you in advance.
And you're still listening. This is all on you, people.
It's not going to get particularly better.
No.
So yeah, if you're a little squeamish, you've already you've dived too far in. We've got episodes on lasagna and things. You should listen to those.
It's tastier.
So that is just what is balut in general. That's the sort of the definition of what it is as a dish.
Yep.
In case people weren't aware, because I'm sure a lot of people haven't tried it, even if it's been on TV a lot, they still probably haven't tasted it.
Now, I was under the impression that it could also be steamed, or am I wrong with that?
It can be steamed. Sorry, I am going to talk a little bit about the actual cooking and eating later, because we did cooking and eating. But yes, it when it's served as a dish, it's boiled or steamed.
Okay,
but
cool.
I'll go into that a little bit later on. And so, let's talk about the history of balut before we get into actually eating and cooking.
Yeah, when did people start doing this?
So, I mean, today it's sort of mostly seen as being a famous Filipino food. And although there are a few sources out there, maybe ones who haven't done any research, that were just like, oh yeah, it's Filipino, that's it. Most other sources that are actually a little bit more in depth, they all reckon it was first eaten in China, and then Chinese sailors brought it across to the Philippines.
I mean, they do like their weird eggs.
I mean, pretty much, yeah. They like really weird eggs in general, century eggs and all that stuff. But, I mean, as far as the eat anything pyramid goes, they are right at the top of that pyramid.
Very
Literally
much so.
will eat anything. So it's not surprising they came up with this.
Yeah.
In China, there's something very similar to balut, which is called maodan. And I'm sure my pronunciation is wrong because Chinese is impossible.
My bad.
Yeah. It's just one tiny inflection different, and it basically means something else.
Yeah, we just offended, someone's mother.
Yeah. If pronounced right, maodan means feathered egg or hairy egg. That's the literal translation. So it's basically, it's assuming that there is feathers inside the egg.
I'm so lucky that I didn't end up with that. I don't know if I've told this story on the podcast before, but we were traveling through China for a couple of months, and you really, when you're ordering on the menus, you've got to learn what these different symbols mean so that you can read the menu.
I mean, outside of Shanghai and Beijing, there's not a lot of English at all, we found. Not a lot.
And so we were in this town, and I knew that I recognized a particular symbol because we'd learnt the symbol for pork, the symbol for chicken, the symbol, so I was like, ooh, I know that's noodle and I know that's chicken. And I was like, I know those two symbols, so this is going to be some chicken noodle thing. Great, I will have that. Sweet. Ordered it, came out, it was egg.
Chicken egg? Chicken
egg, because I didn't pay attention to the symbol before chicken. So it obviously was like egg of chicken.
Yeah.
And and because I didn't pay attention to that first symbol, I was like, oh, it could have been anything.
Could have been chicken feet noodles.
Yeah, as you said, the Chinese eat everything. So it could have been like heart of chicken, liver of chicken, head of chicken, anything like that. I was so thankful that it turned out that it was egg. But
Egg of chicken.
Egg of chicken. But I tell you, from then on, I was very, very careful on making sure I paid attention to the symbols that were around what I was ordering.
Yeah.
That turned out okay, luckily.
And of course, there was quite a few dishes in China with chicken heads.
Of course.
We had that as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And feet, yeah, all of it.
Anything goes. So, yes, this Maodan, which could be the translation, or because that could also mean 10 different other things. Because I looked up the individual words, and Mao and Dan both mean 20 different things, depending on how you inflect the word. So we're on the rough track here, just about. So Chinese traders and sailors came across trading stuff to the Philippines, and supposedly they would have been eating these fertilized duck eggs, and they got to this place in the Philippines, which was somewhere which was making duck, apparently, and they went, "Oh, you can do this with eggs." But that's the conjecture. But there's really no full consensus on it beyond that. That's how vague the story is.
There's no how, why, when, who.
Nope.
It's a thing.
But I got a few other references that might help us get a little bit closer to the facts. So some sources say that fertilized eggs are actually not so popular in China at all, and maybe that's why, they're into tea eggs, they're into century eggs, so they're like preserved eggs, but not necessarily fertilized eggs. But other people say, well, they were into them, they're just not as popular as century eggs. Like, everybody disagrees on everything with this one. It's been really tough to find any consensus at all.
Is there anything in the history that's saying, because, of course, a lot of, there's certain Chinese dishes that, it's a fertilized egg, which means there was fertility, so therefore eating this particular egg could, make one more
there's
fertile, more
there's
sexy times.
Always those stories.
Be either male or female. It was all the make man strong.
Yeah, no, we'll go into that. I've got a long section on that later on.
Oh, I keep jumping ahead. I'm just so eager to know.
You want to know how much of an aphrodisiac the balut is?
Well, yeah, I mean...
We'll see about that. Yeah, so I can't find any really early records to this reference of this Maodan in China, although some people are like, yes, they had this is what it's called. And I was like, but when was it written in a book? Where's the proof? And no one actually provided it, so I couldn't find actual proof, but people were saying that that's what happened.
And the Chinese were pretty good with actually keeping tabs. They wrote down.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, you'd think so. So maybe it's a little odd that they hadn't mentioned this. I mean, so this would be like, well, maybe the Filipino community did come up with it and it was just taken back to China straight away. I don't know. Well, anyway, I got a bit more information on this. It's not completely conclusive, but still, because there's other eggs from China, like the century eggs I mentioned before, which are like a preserved egg that's sort of basically rotten on the inside, but edible.
It's like green.
It's weird.
And like jelly.
They actually found some of these, like archaeologists found some that had been preserved and stored in a pot that had been sealed, so they hadn't gone any worse. They were like still...
Did someone chuck it in their gob?
Edible is the way, but...
I was going to say, does someone chuck it in the gob and just give it a go?
Yeah, I don't know if it's edible, but they were still intact rather than putrefied. And those dated back to 700 BC.
That's insane.
So those eggs had been around for a while. And of course, they keep better. You're not going to find a balut that's 2,500 years old because they would be very off.
Yeah.
That does not keep. It's not a preserved egg. So, yeah, some people say the Chinese brought this over to the Philippines before the Spanish arrived. So the Spanish arrived in the 16th century, sort of the early 16th century. Some people say the Chinese brought these eggs over before then. Others can claim that it's as late as 1885 when there's finally like some references to this happening.
Well, it's not like the Spanish picked it up and ran around the world with it.
Well, this is actually one of the main reasons why it's probably more likely that it appeared after the Spanish got there. But yeah, I'm going to talk about that in a second. Until really recently, this area, Pateros, which is the same name as the mallard duck, like the word for mallard duck is Pateros. It's actually just in the southeast part of Manila, so it's actually in the capital. Obviously, a few hundred years ago, the capital was not as big and crazy as it is now. So it's more like a village that was on the edge of the capital that got soaked up into the capital. Yeah, really small little municipality right down in the south of Manila, and it was known for years as the capital of Balut. It's like where all the duck farmers hang out. They've got thousands and thousands of ducks, and they're providing balut for everybody around the region. Supposedly they were making the best, and that's why they were doing so well. Or at least they were good at their marketing. I don't know. But yeah. because of them, there was lots. But there was a load of pollution that started once the city became more modernized and developed.
Yeah.
And basically in the 1970s and 80s, they got to this point where they actually couldn't do any duck farming there anymore because the rivers were too polluted for anyone to eat the ducks or the balut.
Aww.
So all of the production moved out of the city, although
Poor
the area is still...
environment.
Yeah, it's a very big city with a lot of people, so it's hard to prevent that pollution. But yeah, it's this area of Pateros, which actually used to be like an inland port. So ships would come in from the ocean through the rivers, through Manila, and they port at this small town and do a bit of trading there. And it was specifically this place that was one of the inland ports. So there was people coming from Malaysia, China, Sweden, India, like people from all over the world were coming here to trade. And it's said that the name of the town, even Pateros, probably comes from the Spanish word pato, for duck.
Duck!
Yeah, it's pato, and duck is duck in Spanish. So obviously at this point, yeah, one other reason why maybe this wasn't a thing until the Spanish turned up, or they renamed the town afterwards and they'd been doing ducks there forever and then they renamed it with the Spanish name.
Yeah.
So yeah, it seems like the word Pateros it's a Tagalog word, but it is coming from Spanish, and it's been adopted into Tagalog.
Yeah.
So before 1770, a specific date, because Pateros used to just be a small barrio in a larger sort of area of the city called Pasig. But then the governor general at the time of the Philippines turned Pateros into its own municipality. So very specifically, we have a record there that was the name of it at that time in 1770.
Yeah.
So that's one of the differences. Half the other stuff is conjecture, and we don't know what it might have been called, but it was probably a thing before, and then officially in record at 1770, it is Pateros. And so you've got to assume at that point that probably ducks were pretty important if it had already been named, like the name of the duck. So something was going on. It's even said in the early 19th century, so only sort of 50 years later, a US diplomat, Edmund Roberts, who visited, he used to call it Ducktown because there was so many ducks. He actually is quoted as saying, "Never before have I seen so many ducks together in one place."
And if only he knew, he would have been walking around going, Ducktown, woo!
I wonder if Scrooge McDuck was, inspired by there.
Yes, exactly.
Disney visited and they're like, yep,
They're like,
this is the place.
He definitely deserves to be a millionaire. He's going to dive off a diving board into a whole bunch of gold coins. Which sounds
die.
now I'm old. I'm like, that's so painful.
That would not work. He would be very injured in that situation.
Exactly.
So, yeah. It's almost impossible to say how long duck production has been going on there, but at least since 1770, it's got to have been. So the other thing that you suggested earlier that might be a reason to assume there wasn't any balut when the Spanish first turned up, yeah, it's because the Spanish did, like a lot of other people, and we've seen this in other episodes, they did make notes. They had chroniclers that went everywhere and wrote down exactly what they found, and they took the information back. And so there's actually information from as early as 1521 that talks about fermented shrimp paste and boiled turtle eggs, not fetus eggs, but just having turtle eggs, which I'm sure was unusual for Spanish. They were like, oh, you eat turtle eggs? That's strange. So yeah, they mentioned these strange things, but they did not mention anything about the locals eating any sort of balut or fetus egg. There was no mention of that at all, but other strange things they did.
And you think that would have definitely been written down because it's just, I mean, even today, it's weird.
Yeah.
And so you'd be like, oh, but they were eating this. It's crazy.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, as I said before, like in Filipino language, the word for duck in general is itik, and then pateros obviously derived from Spanish. So it feels like it happened afterwards.
Yeah.
But no exact records, so this is all just conjecture. There was this early Spanish chronicler called Pigafetta. Weird name. Pigafetta? Yeah, strange.
I'm sure he wasn't picked on by the other sailors at all.
No. He mentions a tribal chief enjoying boiled turtle eggs, and another chronicler, Antonio de Morga, mentions his disgust that they eat this rotting fermented shrimp paste. Which actually, of course, is delicious. So this guy just hadn't had the right dish yet.
Exactly.
So, yeah, they were writing about it. So just based on the fact that they didn't talk about it, sort of suggests that maybe it wasn't happening in the 16th century and it turned up after the Spanish got there. All of that stuff sort of points to that.
It does, yeah.
Not conclusive, but definitely it all points to that, all of that evidence. So, yeah, I think probably sometime around the 1700s is probably...
Yeah.
That's my estimate based on reading all of this stuff, because Pateros was a port area at that point and it was growing into a more popular industry, and obviously people were starting to talk about the ducks from there. That seems to be what's happened. But yeah, super sad that there's been so much pollution that they lost that entire industry.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's nearby regions are now doing all of the duck production, but they're sending the balut back to the area because it's still a cultural heritage thing to have balut in that little town of Pateros. And the tourism department is trying to find ways to redevelop the industry by making it, more like a cultural center rather than actually the farming area.
Nice.
So since the late 80s, Pateros has actually been hosting the Balut Saputi Festival every spring. So if you want to go and eat lots of balut, just turn up there in April. And it's just balut crazy.
Wow. Eat it all till your heart's content.
Exactly. All right, speaking of eating, let's talk about cooking and eating this. And actually, I had an interesting question when I started researching this. Is it more nutritional than a regular egg? Because it seems like a lot of work to make an egg when you could just eat eggs.
Yeah, just eat an egg.
So why is this even happening?
I'm sure you're going to tell us, Tom.
I don't know for sure, but I'm going to tell you some stuff about it. So, yes, balut should be boiled or steamed for 20 to 30 minutes. And then should
that's
always
a long time anyway. That's way longer than a regular egg.
Way longer. You got to obviously make sure that the little inside bits are fully
Everything's
cooked.
well cooked.
Egg white's gone a little hard already before it's even cooked. So I suppose you have to cook it longer for that to cook through or something. I don't know.
There is no under easy going on there.
No, you are fully cooking the hell out of this stuff. So, vendors sell cooked balut out to buckets of sand because everyone wants it warm, and they're not necessarily just cooking it on the street to order because that would take 30 minutes. So they keep it in a bucket of sand and they cook them up in batches or whatever. And then, it stays nice and warm in the sand and they can serve it for quite a few hours. Yeah. And they serve it with little packets of salt, but also they have a little vinegar on the side if you want it. Or, you get a squirt of vinegar. Maybe you can get a little bit of chili. Lots of different condiments you might want to put on. The actual finished cooked balut egg has 4 parts. The yolk part, the bato, which is the albumen. Now, we're in the couscous episode, the strange words for things inside of eggs that are just so gross. So the egg white, once it's gone hard, is technically called the albumen, which is so gross a word. That's one of the grossest words. We had endosperm in the
I think
couscous
endosperm
episode,
is way worse.
But I think albumen still sounds disgusting.
Yeah.
I don't want to eat that. And you don't eat it. So, that's the egg white that's gone hard at the bottom. So, you don't eat that at all. And then, obviously, you've got the fetus parts, where the little bird bit, and then you've got the liquidy part as well that's on top of that. Yeah, I'm just going to call it egg white if we mention it again. I'm not calling it albumen.
Yep.
It's
egg white is sufficient.
Totally gross. So, Yep, you've got the embryo and the liquid part. So, the liquid, though, is something that's unique to duck eggs. Chicken eggs, they don't actually have that liquid form.
No.
So it's a duck egg thing for some reason. So that's, apparently, I've never had a balut chicken egg. So
I wouldn't know the difference.
But yes, so as we said right at the start, it's considered to be a street food. And as with many street foods, it should be eaten pretty soon after cooking because you don't know how long it's been out and it's going to give you food poisoning or whatever. Otherwise, at most, the shelf life of a cooked balut out in the open is 1 day, which is still a really long time.
It's a long time.
But that's another reason why it's such a popular street food is probably because the vendors aren't losing any money because they've got no waste.
Yeah, but also with regular
waste.
eggs, you can just keep regular eggs out on the once they're boiled, you can just keep them out for ages and they're still good for a week. Yeah.
Well, apparently, with balut, 1 day if kept in the open, but if refrigerated, up to 1 week can be popular. So why is this one of the most popular street foods in the Philippines, or at least historically, one of the most popular? Well, obviously it's really cheap.
Someone famous said that it was awesome, and they're like,
course.
yeah.
That's not one of the answers I've got on the card, Betty, but sure. Sure, why not? Maybe. I'm sure there's some famous Filipinos who've enjoyed balut very much. But it's cheap, obviously. That's always a major component of any street food. It's considered to be a superfood. So even before any sort of experiments had been done to see if it is more nutritious than a regular boiled egg, everyone thinks it is.
Take that, kale.
Yeah. It's super high in vitamins and minerals and amino acids and things like that. Apparently there's 6 times as much vitamin D and twice as much vitamin A than there is in a chicken egg.
Wow.
So duck eggs, way more. But there's also double the cholesterol. So one duck egg, Balut duck egg, is like more cholesterol than one person should eat per day. So one of those per day is already quite crazy.
That's insane.
Yeah. So just to double check that this information was correct, that the folklore was correct, a Japanese group did a study on balut, and this study was done by scientist Nolita Sansida and a whole bunch of other people, like a massive group of people did the study, and they looked at how the components within the egg changed during the time it was developing. So like what it was like as just an unfertilized egg, what it was like at 10 days, what it was like at 14 days, 16 days, 18 days, etc. So they did like a full breakdown of every constituent vitamin and amino acid and that sort of thing. Yeah. They found that there were some essential amino acids like taurine that were way, way, way higher, like 20 times more taurine.
What's taurine?
It's an amino acid.
Oh, okay.
There's loads of them. I don't know what they all do. This isn't a science podcast.
No. You want to know? Go find a dictionary.
We need them. We need all of them.
Yeah.
So it's important for diet or something. But yes, compared to an unfertilized egg, like loads more of that and a bunch of other things as well. Now, the thing that you guessed earlier, because it's the classic guess for all gross foods, is that it's an aphrodisiac or regarded as such. So that's another reason why it's very popular. It is considered to give men invigorative power.
Oh.
So it invigorates their
downstairs, their downstairs bits.
Well, so not only is it believed sort of like if you have a balut and a beer, that's going to get you revving up and get you going, but also it invigorates you in general. So apparently it's like a late night student food, because if students need to keep studying late into the night, they'll go and get a balut to sort of like pep them up a bit and keep studying.
Interesting.
So it's not just the aphrodisiac element, but yeah, that's sort of weird.
It's like having a Barocca. Yeah. He's giving you your BB bounce, but it's like...
Have a margarita.
Yeah.
That'll get you going.
There's so many other ways to get going.
But apparently fetus egg is a preference. So there you go.
I am quite pleased I did not know that when I was in university.
Yeah, so of course, as always, there's no scientific evidence to suggest that balut gives you any sort of invigorative
No, is there anything
powers.
in the world that actually legit invigorates, or is it all just placebo effect? And you're like, I paid a fortune for well, not for balut, but like when it comes to oysters and stuff, you're like, I paid a fortune for this. It better make me randy.
I've got no idea. In fact, this would be an interesting podcast, like actual aphrodisiac foods, yay or nay. We just go through them all and be like, which ones are actually aphrodisiacs and which ones not, because that would totally be interesting. The aphrodisiac dish. All right, so the belief, though, that it is an aphrodisiac is so strong that it's estimated that the ratio of male to female consumers of balut is 75% male and only 25% female. I mean, it could also be just because women don't really like it so much.
Yeah.
Or they find it a bit weird. So I don't know, but apparently that's supposed to be evidence that it's must have real aphrodisiac powers, that men are addicted to it, but it doesn't really mean anything,
I just think
does it?
more women just find it icky.
Quite possibly. Now, just for fun, speaking of the less desirable things that you find in street food in the Philippines, I mean, we had some organ stew type stuff, which was actually quite tasty, but sort of weird. We also had some really weird street food that I didn't enjoy at all. But to soften the blow a little bit for some odd-looking street food, just for fun, Filipinos have come up with some fun nicknames for some dishes.
Oh, good.
So I'm going to give you the nickname, and you see if you can guess what this food might be.
Oh, all right.
So here's the nickname, Adidas, or Adidas, after the shoes.
Something that like runs fast? Like, is it like...
Think more literal.
It actually is shoes?
No, but you would wear shoes. You would wear shoes on these things.
What?
Feet. It's chicken feet.
Oh, of course.
Adidas chicken feet. Okay, this other one is called Walkmans, as in like
Sony,
as in like the 1989 prehistory music playing iPod.
These are weird. What would be the literal?
What do you do with a Walkman? Think literal again.
You listen to it.
And where do the headphones go?
Ear.
Yeah.
Ears.
Pig's ears.
I don't think they're very good at these
Pig's ears.
sayings.
I think it's like really random. It's like strangely funny.
It's very odd.
Okay, here's another one. This one makes no sense. I don't know if you'll get this one. And
I didn't get the other two.
No, well, you sort of got pig's ears. You're on the right track to that. They actually have one of the nicknames is IUD, as in the female device that stops pregnancy.
So that's just what, eating labia?
So IUD, this is a nickname apparently for chicken intestines.
It doesn't go up that high.
I don't
think it's meant to go that far.
I'm guessing something to do with the shape, but I also don't see how IUD is any more appetizing than chicken intestines.
No.
And the last one, this one is a much more palatable food, so I don't know why I needed a nickname, but I really like the nickname for this one, so I put it in. This one's called PAL, P-A-L, which is Philippine Airlines. It's the abbreviation of Philippines Airlines. So the national airline of the Philippines, PAL, what would that be? What food would that be?
Chicken or beef?
It's chicken, but it's a plane. What does it do?
Fly.
What does it have?
Wings.
So,
chicken wings.
It's chicken wings. So, it's like the most random stuff ever. All right, so let's talk about actually eating this stuff. I mean, I think we sort of talked about it a little bit as we went along, but yeah, we talked about the condiments. You can put some salt and some garlic, or some people put garlic on it as well. You can put vinegar on it. Some of the vinegar is made with coconut sap, so it's like coconut
whatever
vinegar.
Makes it more palatable.
I mean, I don't know. You put a squirt of vinegar on it, and then you just taste a little bit of sourness, but it still sort of tastes a bit
funky,
just like a funky egg. That's all it tastes like to me, is a bit of a gross funky egg which has got bird bits in it. I don't know. I don't get it.
Yeah. So for me, trying balut, because we were staying with someone and it was sort of like just inappropriate to say no because he was so excited for us to try it for the first time. And yeah, it's definitely not as bad as you actually envision it to be. It's all a mind game, and you have it all in your head, and you really work yourself up into a frenzy, and it's actually not that bad. But it is like weird, funky boiled egg.
Yeah, it's just
and I wouldn't even say it was that crunchy at 18 days.
No.
It wasn't crazy crunchy.
I think crunchy, when you think about it, like you'd be talking about chips, crunchy. Like, no, it's not even slightly like that crunchy.
No.
It's just, it's noticeable that there is something in it that has crunch to it.
That's not egg.
Yeah, there's not egg.
Yeah.
And that's because there is something in it that's not egg.
You are exactly right.
Yeah. So,
but yeah, it's not as completely horrible as you think it would be, but it also is not all-round pleasant eating either.
No.
In my opinion.
So if you do want to eat some balut and you don't have a local there with you like we did to explain how to do it, the plan is you take it with the wide end up and you break the shell there at the wide end. And then there should be, if it's the 18-day at least, you should have definitely a little bit of membrane you can pull off or you can eat, and you can slurp the liquid straight away. And it should have a slight sweetness and cleanness to it, apparently. I don't feel like I had any cleanness, so I don't know if we had a weird one.
I don't know.
He seemed to think they tasted normal when he had one. I don't know what was going on.
I was just terrified about the upcoming act, so I don't know if I was paying too much attention.
Yeah, and you should savor the wonderful balance and flavors, apparently. That's the professional way.
They love it. They love that. That first slurp is like what everybody looks forward to mostly. Filipinos talk about how much they love it.
Yeah, that first slurp is apparently supposed to have some sweetness, which is why they put a little bit of vinegar in to sometimes balance it out.
Yeah.
I think maybe I put too much vinegar on. I didn't find it to be sweet at all, but who knows? Once you've slurped that little bit of liquid, then you can also sip out the embryo and the egg yolk bits, and you can peel around the eggshell, so it gets to that a little bit easier. And then, yes, the albumen.
You said you wouldn't say that word.
The egg white is at the bottom, and it's really, really hard, and you don't eat it.
You don't
it's like
eat
a little
that bit.
stone in the bottom of the egg.
Exactly. That's a good way to explain it.
Yeah. I mean, you can chew into it, but it's not good.
No, it's hard, and it's like
hard-ish.
it's almost like a shell at the end. Not like eggshell, but like a seashell at the end of the egg. It's weird.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah. It's sort of strange, but an important cultural food. So if you go to the Philippines, I feel like you sort of have a duty to try these things because it's really important.
You know, if you're someone that's like, I'll give everything a try once, totally do it. Give it a go. Don't let your mind come too much into it or, freak you out about it because it honestly isn't that bad. But yeah.
I mean, unless you're a vegetarian or vegan, I don't really see how you can have a moral argument about this, because I guess some people are like, oh, but it's a little baby duck and you killed it. And it's like,
yeah, but veal's great.
Veal's, well, some people won't eat veal, so I know.
Well, yeah. I mean, everyone's got their own thing.
Yeah. I don't know.
I know, it's a difficult world, but I do think if you are a meat eater, you are a meat eater, so you can't really judge anyone. But what else did they choose to eat, especially when it's a cultural thing? You just were brought up in a different culture.
Yeah, exactly. Filipinos love it, so, So if you want to see the video of us eating this, because we did film it with our friend Michael, who was there hosting us in Dumaguete, which is one of the smaller cities on the island of, was it Negros?
Oh, I can't remember. So long ago now.
It was a long time ago.
I think it was Negros. We were learning to scuba dive there.
Yes. So we went to learn to scuba dive, and as an aside, we ate balut.
Yes.
Because why not? Perfect scuba diving food. Because it invigorates you, ready for a long scuba dive. But yeah, you can head to foodfuntravel.com/balut podcast to see the video of us eating it. But yes, once again, it's a little gross. So if you thought listening to this was giving you a little bit of the icks,
then
actually
don't watch the video.
Probably not for you. But if you want to see us doing that,
it's
sort of
pretty
fun,
funny.
Yeah, it was random, weird,
and you
fun,
can
and
see
gross.
Meg and Tom 2013 quite a little bit skinnier than what they are in 2019.
Oh, we've eaten too much food, but it's been fun. So let's finish up with some strange facts. So as if this episode wasn't strange enough already.
Oh, there's more strangeness
just
to be
a few
had.
quick ones, just some fun random things that I found out when I was doing the research for this. So on April the 10th, 2015, former mayor of Pateros, which is the duck village that we were talking about, Ducktown.
Ducktown.
He partnered up with the Center for Culinary Arts in Manila and the History Channel, it's the US History TV show channel. I don't know, whatever it's called.
I think it's called the History Channel.
It's called the History Channel, isn't it? Apparently, those guys, they teamed up to serve the world's largest ever serving of balut all in one place. And I don't mean one giant egg.
No, like
I mean a lot of balut
lots.
cooked into one dish. They actually put 1,000 pieces of balut in adobo, which is like a sauce, famous sauce from the Philippines.
Sauce.
It's good. I do like adobo. The total weight of the dish was 117.5 kilos.
Well,
that's a big load of balut right there. And everyone in the town ate the dish, and the record was awarded to them. So that's it. That's apparently 2015. 117.5 kilos of balut in one dish. Crazy stuff. So fact number two, Filipino-inspired restaurants. One is called Maharlika and Jeepney, which is like the little transports.
Jeepneys, they were cool.
The little minibuses they have in the Philippines. These two restaurants are in Brooklyn, in New York City, and they started a balut eating contest. Of course they did.
Mm-hmm.
So since this annual contest began, it has seen an impressive amount of 40 balut eaten in 5 minutes by one person.
Oh, that's a lot.
So that isn't, because the cholesterol per balut is, so that's 40 times the amount of cholesterol you should eat per day.
He got a t-shirt, his photo on the wall, and a doctor's checkup.
Yeah, heart attack.
That's his heart attack as a prize.
Another competition that was at the Filipino-American Festival in New Jersey had the one contestant, the winner, consumed 20 balut in 2 minutes and 22 seconds.
What?
So that's also insane. And, if you want to be the next
I'm
balut
guessing he
champion...
didn't have to peel them for that. It
must have been pre-peeled,
yeah. To get that, for sure.
If you want to be the next balut eating champion, just head to one of those competitions. Just look them up online. The New York City and the New Jersey Filipino festivals and restaurants, and they're doing some eating. Quite easy to find.
Off you go. Have fun.
And final crazy fact for this episode, because, as if all that other stuff wasn't crazy enough, the most bizarre belief is that if you eat too many balut, you will turn into an aswang, which is a supernatural creature that carves through human flesh.
Oh.
But the only way to avoid becoming an aswang by eating, obviously, 40 balut in 5 minutes.
Aswang?
It might be aswang.
That sounds like aswang.
So, whether it's a supernatural creature or just someone you don't like very much, you aswang.
Aswang.
The way to get rid of an aswang is with salt, apparently. So, one of those classic things. Why do people think that salt stops supernatural beings? Why has that become a myth?
I don't know, because as far as I know, salt on things make things better. So I don't know why
Well, unless you're like a leech.
It's not good for leeches.
Leeches don't enjoy salt at all.
They don't.
But I love salt on things, so I don't know. So yeah, obviously put salt on your balut. Don't have it unsalted, otherwise you're going to turn into an asswang, and no one likes an asswang. All right, that's it for this episode, The Wonderful World of Balut. If you head to the Philippines, please do try it. It's important.
Give it a go.
It's on a lot of street corners. Not so many now, as you said. Like it's becoming less popular as other foods become more popular, but it's still there. So if you see someone with eggs in sand or in a tray or steaming them,
it'd be like a little basket-looking thing.
Yeah,
or,
it could have a basket. I mean, they might shout out that they've got balut. It's sort of obvious once you recognize the first one, then you're like, oh yeah, they're all selling balut. Yeah. Everyone's doing it.
Yeah.
So yeah, if they've got eggs, it's balut, not boiled eggs. So if you're going there expecting to get a boiled egg, you won't get one.
You will be horribly disappointed.
You will be having a very different eating experience from that. So also, if you enjoyed this episode, which you probably didn't because it's really gross. So actually, don't leave us a review right now unless it's 5 stars.
Just
listen to a different episode.
5 stars for actually eating balut and surviving it. We suffer for our craft.
Well, many people have eaten it.
But I want 5 stars for it.
Yeah, I would like 5 stars for it, please.
Yeah.
So yeah, rate, review, subscribe, of course. And we'll be back next, in 2 weeks.
Yeah, next fortnight.
Or maybe it's already out, of course, because that's how podcasts work. That's how podcasts work, right?
Or just binge all the episodes.
If you listen to this 3 years down the track, then you got loads of episodes to listen to.
Aren't you in luck?
You really are. Took us years to make all of these, and you could just listen to them all in hours. Just done. So yeah, that's it. We'll catch you in the next episode, which I think is going to be Goan food from the state of Goa in India.
Oh, I think a lot of people don't know about Goan food. Yeah. But this is going to be really good because it's freaking yum.
Yeah, I love Goan food. It's tasty, tasty. All right, guys. See you next time. We won't see you. You'll hear us. That'll be it. We won't even hear you. We won't see you. We won't hear you. You'll hear us. That's it.
Thank you for being there.
Yes. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks for listening to The Dish. Don't forget to subscribe and keep this podcast on the air by giving us a 5-star review on your preferred podcast app or channel.
Also, come join our foodie community on Facebook in the Food Worth Travelling For Facebook group. Catch you next time.